Have you ever seen \n in a Python string? What does that represent? This string contains a Newline character. That's what that \n represents. If we print this string, we'll see that the \n becomes an actual Newline. Why does Python represent this as \n? A backslash in a Python string represents an escape sequence. Every character in a Python string represents that literal character, with the exception of escape sequences. Escape sequences represent something other than the literal character that we type. All escape sequences start with a backslash in Python. When I try to run this code in Python, I'll see a warning. This \w is an invalid escape sequence, so Python takes the backslash as a literal backslash. If we wanted to properly represent a literal backslash character, we could use a double backslash. Doubling the backslash lets Python know we want a literal backslash character in this string. Escape sequences can help us avoid invalid syntax while we're creating a string. For example, if we tried to use the enter key to insert a new line into a string, we would see a syntax error. We could fix this by creating a multi-line string using triple quotes and then hitting enter to make a new line. Or we could make a string that uses \n to represent a new line character. Escape sequences can also help us avoid syntax errors due to quote characters. Using a double quote in a string literal that's created with double quotes results in a syntax error. We can fix this problem by escaping the double quotes in our string. This tells Python that those quotes represent literal quote characters instead of ending our string. Escape sequences are pretty common for whitespace characters as well. Whitespace characters are characters that don't represent an actual visible character, but instead represent some sort of blank space. For example, this string looks like it only has 2 characters in it when we print it, but if we look at the length of this string, we'll see that there are 4 characters in it. One of those characters is a space, and the other one is a Newline character. Those are whitespace. Space and Newline are the most common whitespace characters, but they're not the only ones. For example, \t represents a tab character. Tab characters can also be made by hitting the tab key on your keyboard, though sometimes your text editor may convert those into space characters instead. The width of a tab character varies depending on how many characters come before it, so it's more common to see them entered in code using the escape sequence \t than using the tab key on your keyboard. \t makes it crystal clear that the character that we're seeing is in fact a tab. In addition to space, Newline, and tab, there are hair spaces, end spaces, m spaces, non-breaking spaces, and many more whitespace characters. Most whitespace characters you'll probably never see. But there is one more whitespace character that we should probably discuss. You'll almost always see it alongside Newline characters. This is a carriage return. On Windows machines and on much of the internet, line breaks are represented by a carriage return followed by a line feed, sometimes called CRLF, for carriage return line feed. Wait, did I just call \n a line feed? Isn't it a new line? Well, officially \n is called a line feed character, but it's also often called a Newline character because it's used to represent a new line. Sort of. Some programs require a carriage return just before a line feed to treat a line as properly ended. In the 1960s, teleprinters used a carriage return to move the printhead back to the beginning of the line, and they used a line feed to move to the next line. Except some teleprinters allowed just a line feed to accomplish the same thing. Teletype machines came after teleprinters, and early operating systems either required a carriage return followed by a line feed or just a line feed on its own, although early Macintosh machines actually allowed just a carriage return on its own for their new lines. So things are complicated. These different ways of representing a Newline character can cause headaches. So when Python opens files, it normalizes all line endings to simply be represented as line feed characters. This file has lines separated by carriage return line feed line endings. So in a land of escape sequences, that's \r\n. but Python only shows \n because it's normalizing our line endings. To force Python to show the original line endings of the file, when we open the file, we can specify Newline equals empty string. This way Python won't normalize the line endings, so we can see the original \r\n that were in the file. But usually this line ending normalization that Python does automatically is a good thing, so I recommend letting Python do Newline normalization for you. Python also normalizes newlines when writing files, but it does so based on the operating system that your code runs on. Whenever Python writes a line feed character to a text file on Windows, that line feed will automatically be converted to a carriage return followed by a line feed. So in Windows, this code that writes \n line endings to our file will end up writing \r\n line endings to the file. So instead of line feed, it'll be carriage return line feed, specifically when running this code on Windows. If you don't want this behavior when writing certain text to certain files, you can again specify Newline equals empty string when opening your file for writing. When we write our file this way, the original line endings will be maintained from our string. It's most common to specify Newline equals empty string when you know that the string you're writing already has carriage return characters within it. For example, Python's CSV module writes carriage returns at the end of each line because that's how CSV files are usually formatted. So when writing a file using Python's CSV module, you're expected to always specify Newline equals empty string when opening the file you're writing to make sure that you don't accidentally double up your carriage returns on Windows. Python sees a line feed, that's \n, as the canonical way to represent a new line, though sometimes you'll see a carriage return followed by a line feed used to represent a new line, usually when your text is coming from over a network or when you're reading it from a database. Technically, \n is called a line feed, though we usually just call it a new line character.